Bob Fu, welcome back to American Thought Leaders.
Thank you, Yang, for having me again.
No, wonderful. It's been a few months since we last spoke. We talked a lot about the persecution of Christians in China, especially. This is, your focus. You actually escaped persecution yourself, and then basically it seems like dedicated your life to helping persecuted Christians, especially in China, but also, beyond. Bob, why don't you tell us, where do things stand today?
Yes, the persecution against the Christians and actually in general, the religious persecution in China has been really reached to the worst in 40 years.
Okay.
And even in the past, 6 months or so, we have seen the Chinese Communist Party has racked up in the increasing, in an alarming level, is legalized persecution. For instance, in several provinces and cities, such as Guangzhou, they passed the regulation to offer the monetary award for those who report the government-designated so-called illegal religious activities and individuals. So any citizens who found any so-called suspicious religious activities, if they report to the authorities, they can receive up to $10,000 monetary reward.
Unbelievable.
And including foreigners. I mean, so this is explicitly said in these new regulations. And we have seen, of course, the persecution in Beijing, in Guangzhou. Of course, the most famous one we know now is in the Chengdu for the Early Rain Covenant Church, where several hundred of the members were rounded up since December 9th last year. And actually, many of them now were released on bail, but we learned many of them were tortured so severely in order to coerce them to make false confessions and accusations against the pastor, Pastor Wang Yi, who is a constitutional law scholar who had been disappeared, and nobody knows where he is now since December the 9th. And the government accused him of so-called inciting the subversion of state power for basically preaching on the pulpit. And of course, thousands more kind of crosses from the rooftop of the church building were being demolished. And there, in the past, during the Hu Jintao, Zhang Zemin's time, this former president's time, at least some of the urban church activities were tolerated a little bit. When the house of worship is held in their own homes and with family members and relatives. And now, even that. So even when you have a prayer meeting in your homes or 2-3 people in a park, and you would be punished with administrative detention. So this is how bad it becomes.
I have one of my theories, right, is that the government, or let's say the Communist Party of China, used over the last 20 years, initially, when it kind of went out against the Falun Gong practitioners back in 1999, and then honed all these techniques. A lot of what I'm seeing being done against the house churches, the different religious groups, Uyghurs and so forth, it strikes me as being stuff that was developed while they were basically persecuting this massive group in China.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of a tactic you just mentioned, that they used against the Falun Gong practitioners back to 20 years ago. Actually, now they are using that same tactic against the other religious minorities, including underground Catholics and Protestant Christians, and of course even the Uyghurs we know, right? For instance, the so-called Mind Transformation Center.
Right.
Actually, is already in Xinjiang. It's called they call it re-education center or study center, political study center. It not only applies to the minority groups like Uyghurs or Kazakhs, but to Han, Chinese, and Uyghur Muslims, and anyone that really they perceive as a ideological threat. And so there are thousands of these kind of centers. I mean, even in like city in Chengdu, to many of those Christian believers, after they were arrested, they were sentenced. They were sent to the so-called political study centers for brainwash and mind transformation, mind control.
Right. No, it's unbelievable. Is the Communist Party just does it see faith as an existential threat? That's what I'm sensing as you're speaking.
I think, the nature of Communist Party is essentially a very cultic. If they called everybody else as evil cult, actually they match every characteristics of evil cult themselves.
Right.
So the Communist Party is very exclusive. They actually feel, anybody that are not signed up with this extreme kind of, I think, the Communist Party itself is the world's biggest terrorist organization. They are just state-sponsored terrorism to terrify, any citizens that have a freedom, a spirit of freedom. I think for this conference, for this Western Conservative Summit, is so timely. We need to remind the freedom-loving American and global citizens that the Communist Party is not only a threat to the 1.4 or 1.3 billion Chinese citizens, it's really the largest threat to the United States, to the freedom-loving global community as well. We have seen this. Their long arms has already extended to the American soil. We have seen, not only we already know this through their Confucius Institute,
right,
how much penetration into American society.
Right.
It's a societal, existential threat to the freedom, American, society. You mentioned, on the street of New York City. Yesterday it happened. When 50-some Chinese political dissidents voluntarily organized a welcoming party to the Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen.
Right.
They were beaten up physically on the street of New York City by the Chinese Communist Party hired thugs, and 5 of them end up in the emergency room in the hospital. This is happening in San Francisco. This is happening, of course, in Washington, D.C. on the street. This is happening in hundreds of Christian churches in North America. Those church believers.
Physical assault in these churches?
Physical assault.
Unbelievable.
They were threatened. I just, even during this convention, on the hall this morning, I met with an American Caucasian guy who's a volunteer here, who's doing petroleum engineer. He just loves freedom, spend some time in China. When he see I'm one of the speakers here, he tried to invite a Chinese student who's American citizen to come over here. And she served the relationship with this American guy. Out of fear, basically.
I see.
This is just, it's very real.
Because you're advocating so publicly for believers in China.
Yeah, because we speak up the truth. The Communist Party, of course, that's what they fear most. It's the truth. That's why they set up this internet firewall, the 21st century Berlin Wall, that's why they try to crack down freedom of information. That's why they arrest a Chinese citizen, called Zhang and sentenced him for 19 years for forwarding tweet and WeChat messages of 50-some messages. 19-year sentence. That's why they are, kind of harassing any netizens who dare to kind of spread about the persecution stories. That's why they are harassing by using their agents in overseas, freedom-loving communities. That's why they're trying every way to contain the influence of those who dare to kind of advocate and to report the truth and freedom, like your own news organization, the Epoch Times, the Newtown Dynasty TV, the Apple Time and the Apple kind of newspaper, right? apple daily. I mean, that's their kind of way of communism. They just want to contain and suppress any freedom.
Bob Fu, incredible stories, unbelievable. I wish you the best of luck in all your work.
Well, thank you, Yang. I appreciate it. Yeah.